Assalamu alaikum. I am Talha Al-Ali. Today we are going to look at a ghost that has haunted the halls of Western institutional power for more than a century. It is the ghost of a specific kind of intellectual arrogance, an institutional belief that human beings can be treated as raw material for the advancement of state theories, scientific progress, or social engineering. If you find value in the episodes of this podcast, and you find value in these uncovered histories, I would deeply appreciate your support in growing our community by subscribing and sharing this episode with others. We often like to believe that science is a neutral, ever-ascending ladder of progress. We tell ourselves that unethical research is a relic of dark, totalitarian regimes long since defeated, or perhaps the work of rogue actors operating in the shadows of history. We comfort ourselves with the idea that democratic checks, ethics boards, and modern sensibilities have insulated us from the horrors of the past. But history shows a much more complex and terrifying reality. When you pull back the layers of bureaucratic paperwork, university archives, and government initiatives, you find that from the height of the colonial era right through the ultra-modern, progressive decades of the late 20th century, the institutional machinery of research has routinely weaponized its own authority. It has repeatedly used the language of public good, social progress, and intellectual necessity to justify the systemic exploitation of the utterly defenseless. To see this clearly, we have to look across different political eras. We have to look at how a system can completely blind itself to human suffering. Not because it rejects morality, but because it redefines morality to fit its own grand theories. Let us step back and look at how this story unfolds, starting not in a modern lab, but on coastline thousands of miles away at the dawn of the 20th century. Imagine standing on a cold, wind-swept shores of Shark Island, of the coast of Namibia, in the year 1905. The Atlantic Ocean crashes violently against the rocks. More than a century ago, this island was a site of a concentration camp run by German imperial forces. Inside its barbed wire borders, thousands of Herero and Nama people, having survived a brutal colonial war and forced to march through the blistering expanses of the Kalahari Desert, were systematically worked, starved, and neglected to death. Historians estimated that during the colonial genocide, up to 80% of the Herero population and roughly half of the Nama population were exterminated by the German forces. But the violence did not end when their hearts stopped beating. Step inside the tents of the military physicians or the temporary field stations of visiting European scientists. In these spaces, a secondary, highly organized industry was taking place. Under the direction of colonial authorities, prisoners were forced to prepare human remains. This included cleaning and processing skulls and skeletal structures of those who had died in the camp. Remains that were then carefully catalogued, packed into wooden crates, and transported across the ocean to elite German academic institutions. Why was this happening? Because back in Berlin, Munich, and other German cities, the scientific establishment was waiting. Elite university professors, anthropologists were deeply engaged in the study of racial anthropology and pseudo-scientific theories of the human hierarchy. They desperately needed physical data, human skulls, brains, skeletons, and preserved tissues to map out their charts of human worth and validate their theories of European superiority. To the institutions of the German Empire, this was not viewed as a horrific desecration of the dead or an extension of a mass slaughter. It was viewed as vital, cutting-edge research. It was fully funded by public and institutional grants, meticulously logged in academic journals, and celebrated as a contribution to global knowledge. The bodies of African people were treated essentially as a neutral resource, a raw material to be harvested to the intellectual consumption of Europe. The research was deemed as an absolute necessity for the advancement of science. This era established a devastating cultural blueprint within the academic and state apparatus. It proved that if an institutional elite deems a research project scientifically valuable, the human rights, the dignity, and the basic consent of the subject can be completely erased from the equation. The pursuit of the theory becomes all-consuming, and the bureaucracy adjusts its moral compass to ensure the data is collected. Now, empires collapsed, world wars reshaped the entire geopolitical landscape of Europe. Regimes rise and fall, and by the late 1960s, West Berlin has become a completely transformed world. The streets are alive with student protests, anti-authoritarian movements, and a passionate desire for social liberation. The younger generation is actively trying to dismantle the rigid, conservative, and patriarchal structures of the past. They want a new progressive society built on freedom and the detabooing of human nature. But the ghost in the institutional machinery did not disappear. It just changed its vocabulary. In the environment of radical reform, a highly celebrated psychologist and sociologist named Helmut Kentler rose to immense prominence. Kentler did not speak the language of imperial racial anthropology. He spoke the language of progressive education, youth liberation, and emotional healing. He was an absolute institutional darling. He appeared frequently on television, wrote best-selling books, advised the government on youth policy, and ran major social programs. He was widely viewed as a visionary who was helping Germany move past its authoritarian history. Kentler looked at the city's population of homeless, traumatized, and running away teenage boys. Wards of the state who had been abandoned by their families and failed by traditional, rigid youth welfare institutions. And he saw an opportunity for a grand social experiment. A disclaimer: some people might find it very disturbing to listen now to this experiment. This experiment will highlight pedophilia and sexual abuse and exploitation of children. If these are very sensitive topics for you, I just recommend, instead of listening, maybe at your pace, go and read the Kentler project. I'll get back to it. Kentler approached the Berlin Senate Department of Youth and Family with a radical hypothesis. He argued that traditional former homes and reformatories were failing these troubled boys because they lacked genuine emotional warmth. Instead, he proposed a revolutionary solution: placing these vulnerable children in the care of single men who had a self-identified sexual attraction to children, men who were known pedophiles. Kentler's justification was wrapped entirely in the high-minded clinical language of modern social science and the emancipatory pedagogy. He claimed it was a therapeutic breakthrough. He argued that these men would provide an intense, dedicated, and unconditional emotional warmth to the children precisely because they were infatuated with them. In his research papers and academic presentations, Kentler explicitly reframed horrific sexual abuse, systemic grooming, and exploitation as a form of progressive emancipatory care that would help children bypass traditional societal repressions and develop into liberated adults. And because Kentler was the ultimate expert, the state apparatus believed him. The Berlin Senate did not just look the other way. They actively institutionalized the experiment. For 30 years, from the late 1960s well into the 1990s, the state youth welfare system systemically funneled vulnerable children directly into the homes of known abusers. The government paid these foster fathers regular monthly stipends using public tax money. When survivors tried to complain, when the physical and psychological trauma become too obvious to ignore, the network of psychologists, youth welfare workers, and researchers protected the integrity of the experiment. They simply moved the children to different abusive homes to keep the project going, shielding the foster fathers from criminal investigations. In 1988, Kentler published an official report evaluating his project, declaring it an overwhelming success. The vulnerable, powerless children became a permanent experimental subject, sacrificed on the altar of the radical academic theory that promised social progress. But we must stop looking at the paperwork for a moment. We must look past the theoretical frameworks, the Senate approvals, and the academic credentials. Because behind every document, every research paper, every government meeting, there was a child, not a theory, not a case study, not a social experiment. A child who had already experienced abandonment and then discovered that the adults assigned to protect them had placed them in danger. Imagine being a 10-year-old boy already neglected by the world, handed over by an official state worker to a man who views you not as a human being to be raised, but as an object of desire. Imagine trying to tell a social worker what is happening to you in the apartment, only to be told that you are misunderstood, that this is part of your modern upbringing, or worse, to have your cries completely ignored because the professor running the program has assured everyone that everything is fine. The sheer loneliness of that experiment, trapped inside an experiment funded by the government, is the true human cost of this institutional blindness. The tragedy continues directly into our present day. When survivors like Marco and Sven finally found the strength to speak out as grown men, they did not find immediate justice, open arms, or profound accountability. Instead, they found a bureaucratic fortress. Because the abuse happened decades ago, the statute of limitation protected the perpetrators from criminal prosecution. Helmut Kentler died peacefully in 2008. A respected academic never seen the inside of a courtroom. For years, the very state departments that authorized, managed, and funded the experiment were the ones left in charge of investigating it. This conflict of interest led to endless food dragging, institutional amnesia, and systemic refusal to grant meaningful restitution or full disclosure. The system instinctively protected its own reputation, treating the survivors' pain as inconvenient. Historical footnote to a historic social study rather than a catastrophic failure of a human protection. When we look at these two seemingly disparate eras side by side, the cold clinical processing of human remains on the shore of Shark Island in 1905 and the state-sanctioned betrayal of foster children in the apartments of West Berlin in 1970, we are not looking at identical historical events. A colonial genocide and a domestic child welfare scandal are distinct phenomena with different historical contexts. However, we are looking at deeply disturbing institutional pattern. the underlying logic between these two eras sharing a dangerous resemblance. It's the recurrent belief within modern institutions that certain populations can be rendered voiceless, stripped of their agency, and used as a laboratory for the ideas of the elite. The vocabulary changes completely, shifting from imperial racial hierarchy and colonial expansion to radical social progress and psychological liberation. But the structural behavior remains terrifyingly consistent. The vulnerable are reduced to objects of study. The intellectual experts are granted absolute, unquestioned moral authority, and the state provides the funding, the legal framework, and the bureaucratic cover to shield the researchers from accountability. Unethical research is not only a historical event belonging to one regime or one era. It is a continuous living hazard within any system that values abstract theories, institutional prestige, or state efficiency more than the living, breathing dignity of a human being. The danger does not disappear when a regime falls. It simply adapts to the language of the next era, finding new ways to convince well-meaning bureaucrats that the exploitation of a few is justified for the advancement of many. As we work to decolonize our minds, we must learn to look past the high-minded vocabulary an institution uses to justify its actions. Cruelty is rarely loud, chaotic, and obvious. More often than not, it's quiet, organized, scientific, and carries the absolute stamp of official approval. We must remain vigilant against the authority of the expert when the authority demands silence of the victims. Thank you for listening to this episode. Keep questioning the structures. Keep listening to the voice the system tries to erase. And until next time, keep your minds open and in the process of decolonization.